Overthinking feels like intelligence. It feels like caution, like depth, like control. But it's none of those things. Overthinking is a slow erosion of action, of confidence, of instinct. It's the illusion of productivity while you're quietly drowning in hesitation. Nietzsche saw it clearly. He didn't call it overthinking, but he spoke of a mind that becomes too heavy, a mind that doesn't serve life, but chokes it. He believed that thought, unchecked, becomes its own tyrant. That when you think too much, you begin to worship doubt. You lose faith in instinct, in motion, in the simple act of doing. And slowly, your life becomes a theory, not a reality. Because every decision delayed is a path denied. Every second spent analyzing is a moment not lived. Overthinkers don't just miss opportunities, they miss life itself. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But when your mind is flooded with imagined hows, what if this fails? What if they judge me? What if I'm wrong? The why fades. The clarity disappears. And what's left is paralysis. Not peace, not insight. Just fear wearing the mask of thought. Overthinking is often praised as being careful or wise. But wisdom isn't delay. Wisdom is decisive. It listens, weighs, and then acts. Overthinking? It loops. It avoids. It hides behind analysis because it's afraid of being wrong, of failing, of not being enough. But the irony is this: in trying to avoid failure, the overthinker guarantees it. Overthinking disguises itself as responsibility, as maturity, as intelligence. But underneath that polished surface, it's often rooted in one thing: fear. Not fear of making a wrong decision, fear of being the wrong decision. Nietzsche believed that when the will is paralyzed, thought becomes poison. He didn't romanticize indecision. In his world, hesitation was a symptom of weakness, a failure of the will to power. Because life doesn't wait, and neither do the opportunities that shape it. The overthinker lives in a strange purgatory, not fully here, not fully gone, always preparing, never arriving. They build mental models of every possible outcome, yet never test reality. They mistake readiness for movement. But readiness without risk is just fear in disguise. Nietzsche once said, "The doer alone learneth," meaning, only those who act truly know. You can study swimming forever, but you'll still drown if you never touch water. Thought without experience is noise. Overthinking turns you into a ghost inside your own life, present but untouched by the heat of existence. And the worst part? Overthinking convinces you that you're being responsible, that you're being smart. But that's the trap. Because it feels like work. You're exhausted, you're stressed, your mind is racing. But nothing changes. No decision is made. No life is lived. You're frozen, but burning energy like you're in motion. Jung spoke of the tension between opposites. But Nietzsche? He pushed it further. He believed in action, that the mind exists to serve the will, not suppress it. And when you think yourself into paralysis, you're not cautious. You're cowardly. And no amount of logic can hide that truth from your soul. There's a moment in the life of every overthinker where they realize something terrifying. The thing they thought was protecting them is what's been ruining them. You tell yourself you're being careful, that you're not rushing, that you're just trying to make the best choice. But beneath that narrative, something quieter is happening. You're delaying, you're hesitating, and you're slowly building a life made entirely of almosts. Nietzsche believed that the greatest danger in life is not pain, not failure, but stagnation. a flat existence, a life where nothing truly happens because nothing truly dares to begin. He called for will, for drive, for the kind of instinct that doesn't wait for perfect clarity before it moves. Because in his world, action was truth. Everything else? Excuse. But overthinking drowns instinct. It mutes that primal whisper inside you that says, go, speak, risk. You start needing guarantees. You want proof before you even begin. You rehearse conversations that never happen, prepare for rejections that don't exist, predict endings before the story even starts. And that is how the mind betrays the soul. Because while you're overanalyzing, the world is still spinning. Time is still moving. The people who are less qualified, less experienced, but more decisive, are passing you. Not because they're smarter, but because they're not afraid of being seen trying. Overthinking is a subtle form of perfectionism, but not the kind that pushes you forward. The kind that holds you hostage. You wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling, and life just keeps slipping through your fingers. Nietzsche said, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." But the overthinker fears chaos. They try to tame it, organize it, predict it. But stars aren't born in spreadsheets. They're born in fire. If this reflection hits something real inside you, subscribe and hit the bell, not for more content, but for more clarity. The overthinker doesn't live in reality. They live in simulations. Endless what-ifs, looping questions, invisible conversations with people who aren't even there. Their mind becomes a battlefield of imagined scenarios. And the enemy? Themselves. This is the dark irony of overthinking. The mind becomes both the torturer and the tortured. Nietzsche recognized this trap before psychology had a name for it. He didn't see the mind as inherently virtuous. In fact, he warned that unchecked intellect can become a disease, an obsession with prediction, control, and explanation that removes you from the rawness of life. And that rawness is where truth lives. The overthinker often believes they're being smart. They see what others don't. They anticipate what others ignore. But insight without motion is paralysis. Seeing 100 paths and walking none isn't intelligence. It's fear, wearing a graduation cap. And the price of that fear? Lost time, lost chances, relationships that never start, opportunities missed, dreams that become memories of ideas you never dared to pursue. What's worse is that overthinking is often invisible. People don't see your struggle. On the outside, you look calm, composed, even thoughtful. But inside, you're spiraling. You're exhausted from carrying conversations that haven't happened, decisions that haven't been made, futures that haven't occurred. Nietzsche understood that the danger of living in thought is that eventually, you stop living at all. Because when you're stuck in your head, life passes by untouched. Love feels risky. Joy feels suspicious. Peace feels temporary. And every moment is filtered through the question, what if this goes wrong? But here's the real question. What if it doesn't? And what if the only thing standing between you and a life fully lived is your refusal to shut off the noise? The mind will do anything to avoid uncertainty. It will create stories, generate false threats, replay past mistakes, and catastrophize the future, all so you can feel like you're in control. Overthinking is not about clarity. It's about safety. And safety, when worshipped above all else, becomes a prison. Nietzsche knew this instinct intimately. He believed that the human being, at its best, embraces chaos. That we were not built for comfort, but for becoming. But overthinkers reject chaos. They don't want to become, they want to be sure. They want to know how things will unfold before they step into them. And in doing so, they give up the only thing that ever leads to growth: risk. The tragedy of overthinking is not just the missed opportunity, it's the slow erosion of confidence. Every decision delayed becomes a small vote against your own intuition. And over time, that adds up. You stop trusting yourself. You second-guess everything, not because the situation demands it, but because self-doubt has become your baseline. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" You ask, "What if I regret it?" And that question, that seed of fear, becomes your compass. Not desire, not vision, just the avoidance of pain. But here's what Nietzsche would argue: pain is inevitable. So is failure. So is loss. The point was never to avoid them. It was to grow stronger because of them. "What does not kill me makes me stronger" wasn't meant to be motivational. It was a warning. If you try to avoid the burn of life, you stay soft, fragile, defensive, hesitant. And life has no mercy for hesitation. So the next time your mind spirals, when you find yourself analyzing every angle, consider this: are you solving a problem? Or are you protecting yourself from a decision you already know you need to make? That distinction, that razor-thin line, is where most people get stuck for years, even decades. Indecision feels neutral, safe, like a pause. But Nietzsche would argue, it's not a pause, it's a choice. A decision to not move, not try, not risk. And that kind of decision, made over and over again, becomes a way of life. A slow, quiet resignation. Overthinkers often live in a space between realities. They rehearse lives they never live. They draft letters they never send. They imagine futures they'll never step into. Why? Because they're terrified of being wrong, of starting something imperfect, of being seen failing. So instead, they wait. And the waiting becomes a habit, a personality, an identity. Nietzsche believed that the human spirit is meant to stretch, to strain against itself, to fall, to rise, to suffer, to will again. Overthinking interrupts that cycle. It sedates the will. It replaces becoming with planning, truth with probability, and life with theory. And slowly, the overthinker becomes the observer of their own potential, always close to it, never inside it. You tell yourself you'll act when you're ready, but readiness never comes. Not because you're not capable, but because you're addicted to safety. And the tragedy is, life doesn't reward the most prepared. It rewards the ones who move. Nietzsche warned us, "He who hesitates is lost." Not metaphorically, literally. Because while you're analyzing your options, someone else is taking the one you want. While you're wondering if it's the right time, the moment has already passed. While you're preparing to speak, the silence has already said everything. And here's the hardest truth. No one's coming to push you. No one's going to tell you, "It's safe now." No one's going to clear the fog. Because it was never about the fog. It was about your fear of walking through it. So ask yourself, how much of your life are you willing to leave unlived just to avoid discomfort? There comes a point when even the overthinker runs out of thoughts. Not because they've found peace, but because they're exhausted, mentally drained from exploring 1,000 futures, solving problems that never existed, building entire realities in their heads, only to realize they never moved an inch. That's when the truth hits. Thinking didn't protect you. It paralyzed you. The opportunity passed. The words went unsaid. The risk you avoided? It became the regret you carry now. Nietzsche didn't worship thought. He worshipped will. That force inside you that acts even when there's uncertainty, that steps forward without full understanding, that risks embarrassment, failure, pain, all for the sake of becoming. Because he understood something most don't. Overthinking is a slow kind of death. It doesn't steal your life in one blow. It slices it into pieces you never get to live. So here's the question you've been avoiding. Are you actually being thoughtful or just afraid? And if you've spent more time calculating life than living it, maybe it's time you stop asking what if and start asking what now. Because there's another kind of power, the kind that moves without needing to be seen. It doesn't overthink. It waits. It observes. It lets others feel in control, while quietly holding the real leverage. If you're ready to learn how to turn silence into strategy and weakness into your most dangerous strength, I'll see you in the next video.